Welcome back to part 7 of our Frogger mini-series, and in this video we'll be setting up the static mesh and animations for one of the vehicles. Let's not waste any time and just jump right into it. Alright, so let's go to our art folder, right click, create a new folder. We'll call this one Cadillac. And then let's import our static mesh. So I have some textures and a static mesh. I'll make these available on Gumroad, and they also should be available on Fab already. Link will be in the description. So I can just drag the textures in, that's easy enough. The Cadillac, when I drag in, it's gonna start in Import Wizard. The only thing we need to change is under the static mesh. You'll notice an issue under Build at the bottom. There's an option for Build Nanite. This is a mid-poly asset, so nanite doesn't work well, and it will collapse some of the edges, so the static mesh won't look right. So uncheck that and then hit import, and then you should be good. Next thing we need to do is right click on the albedo. We'll do create material, call this m_Cadillac. We'll double click that to open up the material, control spacebar to open up our content drawer, and then we need to select the normal and the mix map, basically the other two textures. Drag them in because we need to build this out. This one's not too complicated. You're basically just going to take the normal, feed it into the normal, the albedo, you're going to feed that into the base color, and then the mix map, you're going to take the red channel, feed that into ambient occlusion, green is going to go into roughness, and blue is going to go into metallic. You don't have to worry about too much why. I use a texturing program called Marmoset, and that just happens to be the defaults that it uses. So depending on the program you use to make your materials, your mileage may vary. So we'll go ahead and save that. Let's open up our content drawer. Now we need to set that material on some of these static meshes. It looks like just the steering wheel, the front and back wheels, and then the body of the car. I'll start with the car. We'll double click. You can see right now this is kind of how it looks. We'll go to the material, do m_Cadillac, and then when we assign that, that should fix that up. Now if you notice any of the edges are collapsed or a little wonky, it's probably because when you were importing the static mesh, you left the nanite option on, and it like I said, it doesn't do well with low or mid poly. It's meant for, photorealistic scans, high geometry, basically really dense static meshes. All right, so we'll save that. And we're going to rinse and repeat for the remainder of the static meshes. So the front and back wheel, and then actually just the steering wheel after that. We'll leave everything else alone because everything else has an emissive or some basic color to it. So it'll be a little bit easier. But all right, that completes the static meshes, so we're good there. Like I said, we didn't do anything with the headlights, taillights, or windshield. We'll leave those alone. But we will go back into the blueprints folder, and we set up a child instance called BP_Cadillac. We're gonna double click and open that back up. If we go to the viewport, we notice we just added a simple cube. You can basically highlight that and delete it. We're no longer using it. We'll bring up our content drawer. Under the Cadillac folder, we're gonna select all the static meshes, so the front, back, car body, headlights, taillights, windshield, steering wheel. There should be 7 items selected. And when you click the add option, you'll see static mesh, multiple assets. Drop that in, it'll build out the static mesh. So now we actually have what looks to appear to be a car. There's an issue with it though. We're gonna be doing some animations in engine, and we need to be able to rotate and kind of move things around, but we need some of the static meshes to follow one another. So primarily we need the steering wheel, the windshield, taillights, and headlights to all be a part of the car body. So we'll highlight them, and then you just drag them underneath. So it's basically they're children of the car object. So now if I were to select the car object and rotate it, you'll notice the windshield and taillights follow it. We're not going to parent the front or back wheels because we're going to animate those separately. And there is also an issue with the front and back wheels. We're going to be rotating them, but you'll notice if I try to rotate them, the pivot point is off. So we will fix that here in just a second. Which actually, we could probably do... Now we'll wait a little bit on it, actually. Let's select the car object, and we're going to search for collision. Defaults that it comes in is block all. Let's set it to overlap all. And then we're going to basically repeat the same for all the children. And then we'll also do the same for the front and back wheels as well. Because remember, we're not doing any hit events. We're just going to drive all logic through overlap events. So we need to be able to go through the frog, not push the frog around. If you're doing some sort of collision system where you want to be able to hit the frog and propel the frog some distance, you know, that would be where you'd want, you wouldn't want to use an overlap setup. You'd want to use, you know, a block all, and you'd use a hit event. And you'd basically ragdoll the frog, which that could be fun too. So maybe we'll do that in a follow-up. Okay, so that basically takes care of the collision side of things, but we still need to address our actual box trigger. So this collider box here is a little bit too small. We'll basically need to scale it up. You can adjust the box extent in the details panel. I found 250 by 200 by 140 works pretty good. You just may have to bump it up just a bit. So we'll just drag it up like so. And that works pretty good. So the car will basically go through Frogger, and when this box overlaps with the Frogger, it'll trigger the death state, and that'll be how we drive that logic. And now that we got that done, we can try to see what this looks like. But real quick, we're gonna highlight the root component, which is just BP_Cadillac. In the right hand details panel, we set up a preview mesh code logic in the previous video. You might have skipped it. If you did, you could probably skip this too. It was optional, but I'm going to change that from the cube to use the car body. And now when we look in, we can actually see preview meshes of where the car is going to go to. Our map is a little bit too small for these static meshes, so I think just for this demonstration, we'll go to File, click New Level, choose a basic level and hit Create, and then Save Selected. You don't need to worry about saving this level. We're just going to use it for preview. So I'm going to spawn in here looking this way. So I can take that blueprint, drag it out, and I'll rotate it 90 degrees that way. And then we'll press W to go to translation, drag it up so it's right there. And we can just drag across. And in the details panel, behavior type, we're using loop reset. We can give some duration, like maybe 10 seconds. We'll add 2 control points, a start and end. We are removing on the Y axis. So we're going to take the Y position. Actually, I'm sorry, it looks like it is on the X axis. All right, and then we'll move that over there. Grab that here. And then I'm just going to position it maybe right there. So now we play, we can see the car kind of moves across like so. And then when it gets to the end, it should basically reset, and then it'll kind of start over again. Kind of like so. All right, so let's go ahead and add a few more vehicles. So we'll add one here, and then we'll add another here. We'll rotate this one 180 degrees. And then we'll push this back over here. And the duration for this one will be shorter. So maybe we'll do something like that. All right, and then we already have the makings of our project. But that's only somewhat interesting. We still want to animate the vehicle. So let's go ahead and work on that. Now remember, I hinted at there was an issue with the front and back wheels. You'll notice the pivot point is offset, so I can't really rotate that easily. But what I can do is I can go back into our Cadillac folder. I can drag out our static mesh here, and with it in the scene, I can then go from selection mode to modeling mode. Modeling mode affords us an X-form option, which has an edit pivot. I can select that and just hit the center button and then accept, and it will edit the center point for this object. Now that was the back wheels. I need to do the same thing for the front wheels. So I'll bring that out. I'm going to edit the pivot point, select center, and then hit accept. And now I can simply delete both objects, switch from modeling mode back to selection mode. And then if I go back into the Cadillac, you'll notice it moved the wheels around, but that's okay. We can select front wheels and then go to our what is this, translate tool with W, and we'll just drag that forward. And maybe if I go to right view, and we'll just drag this, kind of just position it appropriately. Same thing with this one, drag that maybe here, and maybe down a bit. I think maybe this one needs to go back a smidge. And that's probably close enough. So if I go back to perspective, I think that'll work well. And then you'll notice if I try to rotate, I can now rotate, which is exactly what we want. Same thing with this one. Okay, so now that we have those set up, we can actually create the code that's going to generate the animations. It's going to be pretty simple. Off the begin play, we can come into a timeline, and then I'm just going to name it timeline. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the front wheels and the back wheels, so we can highlight them with control, drag them in so I get a reference to both. I really just need to pull off one and do a set relative rotation, but I'm going to plug both in as the targets, hook up the update like so, and then we're going to end up splitting this structure pin like so. So now the timeline just needs an option to rotate one of these axes. So if I look at the tire, it looks like that's going to be on the Y, the pitch. So I go back over here, here's the Y or the pitch, so I need to update this to some value. So let's double click on our timeline. And now you can add different tracks. So we'll add a singular float track. We'll call this maybe tire rotation or tire spin or something. Just a simple, we're just gonna add 2 keyframes. We'll do the first keyframe at 0, 0, and then the last keyframe at the end of the timeline, which this timeline length is set for 5 seconds. So I'll put it right at 5. And then the value has to be close to 1 full rotation. So 1 full rotation is 360 degrees. So I'm gonna go 359 degrees. So why am I doing that? Well, this is going to start at 0 and hit 359, and then it's going to loop, because we're going to check the little loop box here, and it'll reset back to 0. The 0 position is the same as the 360 position when we're talking about rotation. It's the same spot. So you don't want to do 360 because otherwise you're going to have a hitch where it'll be on that same spot for 1 second. So set it 1 before, should be good. If we go back, we now have a tire rotation. We can simply multiply that. What we'll do is we'll create a variable called tire speed. That will be a float that is public. So we'll click the little eyeball. And we're going to set it to maybe a default value of 8 starting off to see how that looks. Plug that in here, plug that in there. File save. And now we should have some rotating tires. Looks pretty good. And it's public, so when you select one of the objects, so like this one's the slowest, right? So you can do like maybe 4, and this tire speed, you can do maybe 6. And the one in the back is the fastest, so the tires spin at different rotations. You can basically create that logic. Easy enough. But I also think it would be neat if we can add a little bit of wiggle for the body. kind of give that cartoony look. So the way we can do that is we'll go back into our timeline right here. We're going to add a new float track. Call this one our wiggle. This one's going to be a little bit trickier. We're going to have 4 keyframes. So we'll add a keyframe at 0, 0, which is the beginning of the timeline. And then we'll add a keyframe at 5, 0, which is the end. So it's going to end where it began. And then we'll right click, add a keyframe at maybe 1, 2, 5. It's 1 1/4 second. And I'm just going to do a little wiggle, like maybe 2. And then I'll add a second keyframe at maybe 3.75, and we'll do maybe -2. So you got that, and I don't want it to be jagged, so I want it to be kind of smooth. So I can right click on these and just select them to auto for the interpolation. So it'll be a kind of a smooth little wiggle. And now I have this wiggle parameter, so I can take the car body, get a reference to that, set the relative rotation there, and then we can split this structure pin. And where do we want to wiggle? So if we grab the car, and looks like I want to wiggle on the X, which is the roll. So I want to do that. So we'll go back over here and we're going to plug the wiggle into the roll, which is the X. We'll add a little reroute node here. And actually we can probably see it better just from here if we click simulate. So now we just have a little bit of extra oomph for our little blueprint. So we got our tires spinning, we got the body of the Cadillac kind of shifting left and right. And then when we start adding like sound effects or other things, maybe a little Niagara effect for smoke, this object will really take off and look pretty good. But all right, good people, we'll cut the video here, but as a challenge to yourself, see if you can finish creating the remaining vehicles. Don't worry if you get stuck, because we'll finish them in the next video. But as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.